going on, guys? It's Logan, it's CJ. Welcome back to SwampCast, man. We just saw the instant reaction to the top 12 college football playoff. Literally just happened. We get in the Zoom, and then they finally reveal that SMU has made it over Alabama to clinch that last spot in the college football playoff, which is an absolute joke, if you ask me, man. What I don't understand is the fact that SMU's ranked above Clemson, even though Clemson just beat them. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
What are we
that,
doing?
That was the other thing that you would do if you were to keep SMU in, is you would have to rank them over Clemson.
It's just crazy. It's crazy, man. Yeah, unbelievable, man. We're gonna get into all of that, man. Wow. We were gonna do a live reaction, but for some reason, I guess after you request to do it live on YouTube, you have to wait 24 hours for some reason. So that was really weird. So thank you, YouTube. But yeah, we actually made our top 12. We're gonna go through, of course, what we would have done, but obviously we want to talk a little bit about the actual top 12. So I'm gonna try to find a bracket online, that I can look at for you guys. That maybe just got released. But EJ, how you feeling, man? What's your reaction to this this top 12 playoff bracket?
Yeah, I mean it's being an SEC homer, which I'm not shy to say. I
Yeah.
am. They put SMU in. I mean, because remember last year, it was a little bit different, but we had Georgia, who was number one. They were ranked number one all year. They were 12-0 and had to play Alabama in the SEC championship game and unfortunately lost. And when they lost that game, they dropped them 5 spots in the poll down to number 6. And so now all of a sudden you go from being the best team in the country, you lose by a touchdown. Now you're the 6th best team in the country. So I thought they'd do the same thing to SMU. I thought they'd drop them 5 spots and move Alabama ahead of them. And then exactly like you said, the other dynamic of, well, you can't really have SMU ahead of Clemson. You can't have an ACC team ranked ahead of the ACC champion, can you? I guess you can. So it kind of goes back to, what is the overall incentive of being in the SEC, right? You have 2 ACC teams that made it. One of them hasn't beaten a team. Well, I mean, if you look at the FPI, SMU actually does have a win over Louisville, who's, I think, 15th or something like that in the FPI. So I mean, I guess that's a quality win. They also beat Duke, who's 9-3. But let's be real, Vanderbilt, who's 6-6, is probably as good a team as Louisville and Duke. I mean, to just be
At
real.
least Duke.
At least Duke. At least Duke. Louisville will probably be favored by a touchdown over Vandy. But if Vandy played both those teams, it would be a good game. And then lastly, Alabama has 4 wins over teams that are in the FPI top 20. So it's kind of like, well, if you play a tough schedule, you got to go all in and win all these games, or you're going to get left out. So there's no incentive to play a very difficult schedule if you're a good team. So that's just how it goes. I mean, they're showing that SMU's strength of schedule was 60th in the nation, and their key wins were TCU, Pitt, Louisville, and Duke. So
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, what are we doing, man? And then it shows you Bama, and Bama's best wins. You got, all these teams that are insane. Counting a team that just won the SEC championship. So like, I don't understand what it's just. It's so weird, man. I'm trying to find a visual for the people watching out there. I might have to make my own bracket though. For some reason, because they don't have it actually even out yet, because this is a brand new thing that obviously just happened. So EJ, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put your top 12 on how you would have done it. And let me put that on the screen for everyone. Um, hold up, let me see.
It was pretty. The only inaccuracy was they flipped Boise and Arizona State. I thought Arizona State was going to get the three, but they gave it to Boise, and
Hmm.
then SMU's in over Bama.
Right.
Well, actually, I think Notre Dame. Uh, they gave Penn State the sixth seed. I don't see. No, they gave Penn State the yeah, they gave Penn State the sixth. I don't understand how you give Penn State the sixth seed when they got beat by Ohio State.
I well, I actually had Penn State a little bit higher in my bracket. I had Penn State at number 5. But that's because
Oh, okay.
like how they were saying basically how I made my bracket, which we'll get to in a minute. Right now I'm trying to create this actual final bracket that came out because for some reason they don't have it available online, so I'm trying to create one. Um but they said that it would not affect like the teams that play in the conference championships wouldn't drop a significant amount. Um, at least like the main champions at the top.
Yeah.
We're like Oregon, like Texas, like Penn State, teams that are like in the top 10 or top 5 wouldn't drop significantly. So that's why I kind of kept them a little bit higher. Also, Penn State is a good football team, man. I think that they would beat Ohio State if they went to a head and head right now. Penn State's a team that I think really surprised me, man. I had no faith in this team. I had no faith in Drew Aller, which we'll get to all that in a little bit. But man, they absolutely dominated at times in that game, and were down by like 2 touchdowns and came
Yeah.
back, and it was unreal, man. Their physicality was another aspect that I have not seen all year, and they actually showed that last night. So they looked really good. So yeah, some really good play by Penn State. But
And while you're doing that, I'll just say, yeah, I know we'll react to the conference championship games, but you know, I, the way that the narrative in college football, this is very clear now. It doesn't matter who you beat. It only matters how many losses you have. So if the incentive is to reduce the number of losses, then you should play a weaker schedule. But then coaches are going to think to themselves, well, in order to get to the playoff and actually be able to go through that gauntlet, you got to at least be used to playing good teams every week.
right,
Like you do when you're in the SEC. I mean, if you look at Florida, I mean, I know we're Florida, homers, but Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, that those 4 straight games, that's basically what you would play in the playoffs, right? And if Florida State was anything special, that would have been like a completely so. So anyway, Ole Miss and LSU are out because they got beat by us. So if they would have won, they would have been in the mix, right?
right.
That would have been interesting to see, like if Ole Miss would have beat us, would have put Ole Miss in to the playoff? I mean, I don't know. But to tell me that SMU is a better team than Ole Miss, you're kidding yourself.
Okay, cool. I have it up now.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
no,
got it up.
I finally got it up. All right, cool. So let's go.
Okay.
Let's dive through this thing. So obviously the top 4 we have Oregon at number 1, Georgia number 2, Boise State number 3, Arizona State number 4. Those are the teams that get the automatic bye. They also get a home game. To of course, whenever they get to the quarterfinals. So let's stop. Let's start at the top left. We have a big one here. A game in Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State hosting
Hmm.
Tennessee, which is going to be a really fun game. Greg McElroy actually made a really good point. He said that Ohio State's biggest weakness has been their offensive line at times, and then you have a Tennessee defensive line that's actually pretty disruptive with some of their pass rush and some of their guys in the center. So that's going to be a really fun thing to see. Ohio State, though, a team that I feel like has their back against the wall. I feel like Ryan Day doesn't really have a lot of space for error. You know what I'm saying? I feel like he has to win this game. There's no other point. And then have that kind of rematch with Oregon, but they have to get a win here. I don't think there's no other way to put it. But it's going to be cold in Columbus, man. It's going to be freezing. It's a late December game. It's not this upcoming Saturday, but next Saturday. So it's going to be freezing, probably in the 30s, maybe even 20s, depending on what the wind chill is going to be like. Tennessee's not used to that. They're really not. So that's going to be a lot of these games, actually. There's some really fun ones. I mean, SMU going to Penn State, Clemson, Texas. Like, there's some really fun games here, but I think this is one of the biggest weather-related games is the Tennessee and Ohio State game. So we'll see if Will Howard and them can step up. Obviously coming off of a pretty devastating loss also against Michigan, right? So when you have big losses like that, Nick Saban and all these other, some of the greatest coaches of all times talk about how, when you have a big loss like that, a heartbreaking loss, it's either going to bring a team together or it's going to destroy a team. And we're going to know how good of a coach Ryan Day is, because if this team just doesn't have any fight, even though it's the playoff and you can tell just something is off, I think his job is gone. But if they come in here and they put up a fight and you could tell that they became a better team and that they got coached, based off of that loss against Michigan, I think Ryan Day is going to be here for a while, and I think he has to be, because that's a sign of really good coaching there. Obviously losing four years in a row to Michigan. So what do you think about this game, EJ? Tennessee at Ohio State, freezing, hopefully a night game. I'm hoping for finally a night game in Columbus. That'd be really cool, which would make it even colder.
Uh, you know, all first looking at both these teams and how they got in, is also, let's ask the question, like, why is Tennessee in the playoff? Um, can we ask that? Because number one, when you look at their highest FPI wins, their best win is Alabama. They got in because they beat a team that is not in. And that's why Tennessee's in. They also beat Florida, which is, when you look at their wins on their schedule, Florida's arguably the second best win they have on their schedule based on the FPI. I think we're 21st. That's the second highest ranked win in the FPI, and we're nowhere near the top 25 in the actual rankings. So the question again is, it's your luck of the draw in your scheduling. Um, and they also have a bad loss to Arkansas. So Tennessee kind of reminds me a little bit of Indiana, how they got into the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Ohio State, um, let's see. Ohio State, I think when I looked at their schedule, their best win um, was Penn State. They also beat Indiana and Iowa, which are really good wins. Um, they, like Tennessee, did not make the Big Ten championship game because they inexplicably lost to Michigan. But at the end of the day, this matchup is going to be um, based on Ohio State's physicality against Tennessee's. Ohio State, when they've played teams that are as physical, or in theory should be as physical as them, they folded. They got handled by Oregon, even though that was a close game. Penn State kept the game relatively close, even though Penn State has no game breakers. And you got stonewalled by Michigan and a second string, third string quarterback. Playing Tennessee is going to be a difficult matchup for Ohio State, because I think Tennessee has a formidable defense that's going to negate the rushing attack of Ohio State, which is a huge statistic when they play Michigan. If you can't run the ball, you can't sustain drives. And that's really Tennessee's strategy over the last month, is that their offense hasn't been lighting it up. So let's give them some time to get into the to be able to, get into the flow of the game by stopping you and getting good field position. Um, Tennessee's, when they line up and they say hike, Tennessee's probably gonna be, hey, this is kind of like playing Alabama. This is kind of like playing Georgia. This isn't like we're completely out of our league playing this Ohio State team. The dynamics will be the weather, and it does get kind of cold in Knoxville. I mean, they don't typically play up there in this late in the season, so that'll be a dynamic. But I think Tennessee can keep this game close, if not possibly win the game. It is a very even matchup when you look at the statistics of both of these teams. Ohio State's defense, um, relative to teams of similar talent profiles, um, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan, has not been able to really get off the field. And I think Tennessee, they're going to be a tough matchup for Ohio State.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
this will be the best matchup next to Notre Dame and Indiana. I think it's this
Oh, yeah.
matchup. Yeah, I think this matchup's gonna be really close, like you said, especially if it is a night game. I think the only thing, if this was at Tennessee, at Neyland Stadium, I think this is a win for Tennessee. But it's not. You're in Columbus, Ohio. You're facing an Ohio State team with their backs against the wall. It's going to be freezing. It's going to be cold. These players are going to be playing hard. Ryan Day has his job on the line, as we know it.
Ryan Day.
I I really think we'll see what happens, man. By the way, we're gonna predict this, and we're gonna do a whole bracket. And I know you have the bracket challenge online that EJ was talking about. You could do like a public thing and get everyone doing a challenge together. We're gonna release some
Yes, we'll
stuff,
do
so make
that.
sure you guys follow us on our Instagram. It's in the link in the description. SwampCast Pod on Instagram. And we'll kind of reveal some stuff on that once we figure that out. Now the playoff is out. But yeah, crazy game. Very excited to see that. I think it's gonna you're gonna learn a lot about these two teams. It's gonna be a fun one there. Next game. By the way, the winner of that goes to play Oregon. So getting an Ohio State and Oregon matchup again in Austin Stadium like earlier in the season, it's gonna be incredible. That would be a great matchup. Obviously, two teams that are pretty um, seem pretty even back in I think it was October. Next game, Notre Dame hosting number 10 Indiana. Indiana, a team that's looked dominant all year but has had a very easy schedule. They did get destroyed by Ohio State, a team that now looks very vulnerable. But then you also look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, a team who has played well. They had a good win against Army, who, by the way, Army just went in and destroyed Tulane in their conference championship game. I mean, it was insane. Huge win for them. So they actually look pretty good now. They obviously take a loss against the Texas A&M team first game of the year at Texas A&M. It was very early on, so I don't really look too much into that loss. Texas A&M's a team that can win some games. I think they can win any game, but I think they can lose any game. So I don't really look too much at that. Other than that, though, what big wins does Notre Dame have? What have they proven? Oh, they have a great defense. Yeah, but how many great offenses have they played? You're going to see a really good game here against the Indiana offense with O'Rourke leading the charge there at the quarterback position that can make big plays happen. They have weapons on the outside. They have a running game. You got O'Rourke, one of the most consistent quarterbacks in college football. The problem with O'Rourke and that we saw in that Ohio State game is he was never able to get momentum. In college football, momentum's everything, right? We saw that in the Oregon and Penn State game last night. And we even saw it in the Clemson and SMU game. When you have momentum, everything clicks. Your offense clicks. Your defense clicks. That's why when we have DJ Lagway in the game for the Florida Gators, we usually have momentum, right? Because he brings that energy. He gets the gears going. And that's what's going to have to happen with O'Rourke at the beginning of this game. Indiana has to start fast and has to get him going. So we'll see. This can be a very fun game. Weather obviously not going to be a big issue. Both teams from Indiana. This is also a very, what's the word? I guess like logo game, like brand game, if that makes sense. Two of the oldest programs in college football. Going way back. I'm assuming it has to be a rivalry game of some kind, right? I mean, they're both from the same place, so is this a big rivalry matchup? I feel like it has to be.
Ooh, good question.
They're both Indiana. I don't know. I want to look into that, but I feel like this has to be, some kind of rivalry here. So I think that this, alongside Ohio State and Tennessee, is going to be a very, very good game. And listen, Notre Dame could come out and dominate, but I haven't seen much from them. They haven't faced an offense like, is what I'm trying to say, like Indiana. Because think about it, when they play Texas A&M, they play a Connor Wigman Texas A&M, not a Marcel Reed Texas A&M. So this is going to be very interesting. EJ, how do you feel about this game, man?
So I, I love the FPI. So believe it or not, this is number two Notre Dame in the FPI versus number 10 Indiana in
Mm,
the FPI. Um, and the FPI, I think, heavily weights your point differential throughout the year. So if you're winning your games against easy teams, but you're blowing them out, it gets you a lot more, you know, points towards your FPI. Notre Dame or Indiana won against Purdue 66-0. So in their last game. So that you're going to get a lot of points for that. No, now Notre Dame, some of their, I mean, when you look at their schedule, it's a pretty it's a pretty decent schedule when you're comparing it to other teams that got in. Like if you're saying Notre Dame or SMU, it's not even close. I mean, Notre Dame, you wins over Texas A&M, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Army, who was 12-1 or 11-1, and you also beat USC. So
it's a great win.
you got four wins that are against teams that are up there. USC, believe it or not, is 18th in the FPI. So that's a high ranked win. And they're high because they've lost six games, but all six of those games were within a touchdown. So FPI is looking at game control and how um, you play relative to your opponents, relative to how good your opponents are. So if you're sticking close with a lot of your good opponents, they're going to rake you high, similar to LSU, who's number 17, even though LSU's also, they have four losses on the season. I think this game is gonna come down to um, Notre Dame's overall athleticism advantage to Indiana, I think. Um, and that's the question. Is this going to look like, I don't think it's going to look like Ohio State, but the issue with playing Notre Dame is Notre Dame reminds me a lot of Georgia Tech, except instead of being 3.5 star players, they're 4 to 4.2 star players. And the quarterback is very similar. Riley Leonard plays a very similar style to Haynes King. They're just going to line it up and ram it down your throat. And then when Indiana has the ball, can they move it like they've been doing in some of these games against a little bit slower defenses? So that'll be interesting to see. I think I would say the data right now heavily favors Notre Dame.
Sorry, there you go. You can hear me again. My computer's being weird. And my camera's not connecting for some reason. We'll get that fixed. Yeah. I agree. The USC win is something that I think I totally forgot about. We talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago. Really,
Yeah.
really good win for them. USC's a very good football team. They could easily be a 10-win team right now in the playoff conversation. So yeah, I think that was a good win. So we'll see. USC did put up 35 points. Did put up a crap ton of yards too. I mean, you look at it. Let me see real quick. I don't know exactly how many yards, but I know they put up a lot because they threw two pick sixes there late to lose the game, but they had a chance to win it there late. So they were driving down the field. So Indiana, a team that can get up there and can make something happen. I'm just worried about this Indiana defense, a team that Ohio State just had no problem getting through. You know what I mean? And that's especially after seeing Michigan's defense kind of really get after that Ohio State offense and create turnovers. And I'm just I don't know. I'm a little worried. We'll see what happens. But if Indiana can get some stops on defense, get their offense going, I think there's a good chance that they can keep this game close. This is just a very interesting game. You know what I mean? Like, is Indiana frauds? You know what I mean? What kind of team are they? Because they have the horrible loss against Ohio State and then come back and dominate Purdue. Now, Purdue, I believe, is at the bottom of the Big Ten, but still 62-0. I mean, against any team is very impressive, let alone a conference team is very impressive. So good win for them there. So that's going to be a very, very interesting game. We'll kind of see what comes out of that. I'm sorry, I'm really trying to fix my camera here. It's being really weird. While I'm trying to do that, EJ, talk about this next game we have. Texas hosting number 12 Clemson. How do you feel about this game? Going to be a very interesting one. They're just it's weird seeing these logos together. Just tell me what your kind of instant thoughts on this game.
Lots of orange. I can tell you that. If you like orange, if orange is your favorite color like me, then this will be the game. I was at the Orange Bowl when you had Tennessee Big Orange playing Clemson, who's also orange, in the Orange Bowl. So it was perfect. This is going to be, I think, a little bit better of a game than what I think people would expect. I expect Texas to probably open up like an 8.5 point favorite, something like that, against Clemson. I just think this game is going to be dictated by the Texas front seven. Kubnik, the Clemson quarterback, struggles when he's under duress and he can't use his legs as easily to keep drives going. When you look at Clemson's schedule in games where that has happened, Georgia obviously did not allow Clemson to do anything. South Carolina limited their big plays, and so did Louisville. So if Texas forces Clemson to dink and dunk and go all the way down the field and takes away all these big plays, Clemson's just going to have a tough time trying to end up with more points on the scoreboard than Texas. I know Clemson has to be in because they beat SMU, but that's the other thing that about these playoffs. It's kind of like, okay, well, tell Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina, hey, you'll get in if you play a game tomorrow against SMU and win. They'd probably be like, oh, perfect. Let's beat SMU and get in and have SMU ranked ahead of us after we beat them. So I think this matchup heavily favors Texas. Clemson will have to use defense, which ever since Venables left, Clemson's defense hasn't really been the same. So we'll see. I mean, Clemson's defense did play well against South Carolina, but South Carolina has a very different offensive attack than Texas. So I think this will be an interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest stat line that I would look at is, Texas has been one of the most explosive offenses in the country this year, while Clemson has suffered immensely trying to create explosiveness from their offense. And I think that's going to be the story of the game. I think you're going to see Clemson try to have those, hard, fought drives, those 12-play drives, where you kind of try to convert these 2 third downs each drive. And I agree. I think that front seven and that front four for Texas is going to get to that that Clemson offensive line. You even saw in the SMU game, man. I mean, SMU dominated that defensive line. I mean, now SMU has a good defensive line. I think that's actually probably the most underrated groups in the country, I would say, is SMU's defensive line. A lot of people think of Kevin Jennings and all these other guys. Their defensive line's really, really solid. Probably one of the best in the ACC. And I think that they dominated that line of scrimmage at some points in that Clemson game with their physicality. So I mean, you look at that, Texas is, SMU times 4, and I think you're going to see, like you said, Klubnik, a guy who is a really interesting quarterback to watch. because I believe he's a junior or sophomore. But he just doesn't have that it factor at quarterback as you want, or as previous Clemson quarterbacks have had. So he can create with his legs. He can extend plays. He's very talented. Has a great arm. But this Texas defense, I think, will be too much for him. And once you get sacked, 4 times in the first half, I think, mentally you just can't keep up with that. You know what I'm saying? He won't be able to stay in the game. I think that's what's gonna get him in that one. So I agree. I think this might be one of the biggest blowouts of the playoff as a whole. And yeah, I don't think this game's gonna be even close. Honestly, you're at Austin. I agree. I think this is going to be something that I'll kind of tune into this game, but I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy there. The winner of that goes to Tempe, Arizona against Arizona State. If Texas wins that one, that's going to be a fun game to watch, man. Scadaboo versus this Texas front seven is going to be one hell of a matchup, dude. That would be amazing if that happens. So that's going to be very fun. In the last playoff game for, of course, the first round is Penn State, number 6 Penn State, hosting the SMU Ponies. This game, I think, is... I mean, listen, Penn State is a team that I just, like I said, I've hated on them for years. For years, man. You got guys like Josh Pate and all these other, big guys that just seem to always love Penn State. Oh, it's gonna be their year this year. They're putting stuff together. Drew Aller's a great quarterback, whatever. And I'm like, dude, they're garbage. They're trash. Once they play someone, they're gonna lose. They play a big team, they lose. They don't make the Big Ten Big Ten championship, they lose. They suck. Whatever. They can't win the big games. Well, they didn't win the big games, and they lost against Ohio State. But then they still make the Big Ten championship and go nose to nose with, I think, the best team in the country in the Oregon Ducks. And they looked amazing. Drew Aller in this game against Oregon looked phenomenal. I'm going to pull up his stats real quick. Actually, I have them right over here. Drew Aller, 20 of 39 for 226 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions that did come at bad times of the game. But he looked really solid. Dude, this kid, on a 4th and 10, threw a touchdown pass late in the game to get his team back in it. He looked phenomenal. His pocket presence was amazing, and he was getting rushed all night by that Oregon front seven, led by, I'm not trying to say his last name. DJ whatever from Florida State. His brother is the leading guy there on the defensive line for Oregon. And yeah, they just kept getting to him, but there was just this presence and calmness about Drew Aller in this game. It felt like it seemed like he was there before. Like, if you would have told me this guy was in, a Big Ten championship before, I would be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, but he hasn't. And he just looked very comfortable back there. This Penn State team looked physical. Katron Allen, Singleton back there in the running back positions. Just, dude, I mean, you had Katron Allen get hurt in this game and still ran for 124 yards, 9 yards a carry. Nicholas Singleton, 105 yards rushing. I mean, they were just dominant. Drew Aller also was really good on his feet for 5 carries for 54 yards. I mean, They looked like a national champion. This felt like a national championship game. It really did. With all the physicality, some great defense was being played. The offense was doing their thing. The conference championship games that we got the slate yesterday was full of classics. It really was. And I really think that this was a big step for James Franklin. I think he gained a lot of respect from me. And Penn State as a team gained a lot of respect from me, and so did Drew Aller. My issue with Drew Aller is he has great games, but can he be consistent? That's something that's hurt him his whole career. He'll have great games, but then the next game he just looks like absolute trash. So my big thing now for Drew Aller and this Penn State team is, can you keep up the consistency? Good news is you have the easiest 2 games out of this entire bracket with SMU and going to Boise State. Those are good football teams, but I'm just saying I would rather play SMU and Boise State than, play Tennessee and Oregon, personally. Um, but so yeah, this is gonna be a fun game. We talked about how I personally would rather see I would rather see Alabama in here over SMU. Both of us had Alabama over SMU. It just doesn't make sense. SMU loses. They're still ranked above Clemson. There's a picture that I took that they put on screen last night during the game, and it shows the strength of schedule and the wins and losses versus top 25 opponents. SMU is now 0-2. Alabama's 3-1 against top 25 teams. EJ was saying, against the FPI top 20, they have 4 wins. Alabama does. Then you look at the strength of schedule. Alabama 18th, SMU 75th. So what I don't understand is you're literally telling teams that it's okay to have an easy schedule. It's okay to schedule cupcake games. And hey, you know what? You can still lose your conference championship, but it's okay. It's okay. So my question, it just doesn't make any sense, man. Where is that line drawn? And I know that Alabama had a really bad loss against Oklahoma. That was horrific. And if I made the choice last week with last week's rankings before the conference championships, I'm putting Ole Miss above Bama. I am. But because Ole Miss is not above Bama, I can't put Alabama or Ole Miss at my in the playoff. So that's why in my bracket I put Bama in over SMU. I think Ole Miss is better than SMU and Alabama. I think Ole Miss is a phenomenal football team. I just think they had some faults. Obviously, Kentucky, really bad loss. Florida, not really a bad loss, man. Florida's a good football team. They're late in the season. LSU was a rough one, but Ole Miss is a good football team. They destroyed Georgia. They dominated Georgia. And I think that seeing a Ole Miss versus Penn State might be one of the games of the year, in my opinion. I think that would be a phenomenal game. And now we're stuck with Penn State and SMU. And I was talking to Kristen Saban, which is Nick Saban's daughter, and I told her, I was like, bro, I posted that thing on my story. She saw it. She's like, yeah, preach. I sent her that picture I was just talking about. She said, yeah. She even said, it sucks for SMU. It does. It does. Like, if Bama got in, it would suck for SMU. But that it doesn't matter. That who cares? It's last year the committee made the decision to not put in Florida State, right? And to create their top 4. And why did they do that? Because they did the 4 best teams. They didn't do the most deserving, because if you went off the most deserving, Florida State would have been in, right? They would have. Georgia would have been in. But you didn't do that. You did the 4 best teams from their point of view. And so my question is, why did that not apply for this top 12? I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense. I think it's an absolute joke. I think it's sad. I think you're going to start seeing football teams in college football schedule easy out of conference games. You're gonna see teams playing Rice. You're gonna see teams playing James Madison. You're not gonna see these teams playing anybody, because hey, you can have these easy little tune-up games, and that's okay, because as long as you win these easy games, you're still gonna make it. Even if you lose the conference championship, you're still gonna make it. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. It's horrible to see for college football. I don't know, EJ. I'm sorry I'm going on a rant, man. But what's your opinion on all of it? What do you think of this game? How do you think it's going to go down?
Oh man, I couldn't agree more with you. It's a complete it's just the committee has no guiding principles. Every single year. Unlike college basketball, I always think that that's the model that should be adopted in college football, because there are guiding principles. There's this whole notion of the net rankings, which are similar to the FPI in college football. And then it's how many wins against the top teams in the net rankings do you have? They don't even talk about losses in college basketball. The media asphyxiates everyone and then brainwashes fans to talk about losses as though every team's record is the same. Like Alabama's a three-loss team, and it's kind of like, okay, so they're the same as Duke, who's also a three-loss team. Is that what we're saying? Um, and so because Indiana and SMU have fewer losses, this year they're ranked ahead. And you hit the nail on the head, Logan, when you talked about last year. The committee, they're just so inconsistent because last year you had the Georgia Bulldogs, who were number one the entire season. They were 12 and 0. And because they had to play a very good Alabama team in the SEC championship game, and I believe they lost by a touchdown, they dropped them 5 spots to number 6. So you go from, oh, they're unequivocally the best team in the country, to one game, which is like 8% of your season, to now you're not even one of the 5 best teams in the country. Oh, and last year, by the way, there was no rule that if you won the conference championship, you were automatically in. So it's ridiculous. And then they leave out Florida State. But this year, who was 13 and 0, by the way, this year, you put SMU in? Like, I know we're talking about like 12 and 11, that ranking versus 4 and 5. But the principle of the thing of how you select that last bubble team, completely inconsistent. What is their principle? I didn't listen to the guy. We're just live reacting. But SMU, but Nick Saban, I just saw on my phone, just came out and said, I completely agree with him. He came out and said, well, teams are just going to have to schedule weaker opponents. And I think why you would do that, and a lot of people will say, well, you still have to play in the SEC. Yeah, but the thing is, look at Florida's schedule. We played Miami, UCF, and Florida State in non-conference. Now, Florida State at the beginning of the year was a top 10 team. Miami ended up being a top 10 team, and UCF, according to the FPI, they were favored in pretty much every game they played, but ended up with 7 losses. Um, why would you want to play those games now? Because if you were to play, let's say, who do we play this? Samford. Just play 4 Samfords
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, when you have to mentally prepare for Miami and then you play the SEC schedule, like you need rest, you need recovery, you need an automatic win, and then you can go and play Georgia. And then, so it eases you up to be able to play the SEC schedule as opposed to being stressed out that you now have to play this very difficult non-conference game. Um, and when you look at teams like Florida, what's the incentive of playing Florida State now at the end of the year? I mean, in the 90s, you didn't have the playoff. So if you were to beat Florida State, you would be ranked in the top 2 and you would be able to say that you're the national champion. So there was an incentive of playing that game. Now, if you lose and let's say Florida goes 9-2 and then they have to play Florida State at the end of the year and let's say Florida State makes a comeback and is actually good next year. There's literally no incentive for playing that game. Georgia in the SEC championship game last year, they were better off saying, you know what, Alabama, we forfeit the SEC championship game. You all win. We're just going to not play it and be 12 and 0 and see where the committee ranks us. And then force the committee to drop a 12 and 0 team out of the top 4. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the committee's a joke. The guy that runs the committee is completely void of any principles. And the message was very clear, at least for this year, that we don't care that you played a tough schedule. We don't care that you have 4 wins against top 20 teams and the team that we put ahead of you has 0. We're just going to put them in because they have fewer losses than you.
Well,
So, and then people will say, well, you lost to Vandy. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, Vandy's a pretty good team. And yeah, when you play in the SEC, yeah, Alabama went and lost to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a top 10 roster. When they play with their hair on fire, that is a really good team. When you play a 6-6, who the hell's 6-6 in the ACC? Pitt. I mean, is
North
that
Carolina State, yeah.
NC State? These teams don't have rosters. They have like one player that's going to the NFL. If you're lucky, Oklahoma will still have a dozen players on their roster at least playing in the NFL. So yeah, it's a difficult stretch. Even though they're 6-6, they also had to play Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama and all these tough teams. So it's a joke. There's no incentive to playing these tough games. The ACC should not have two teams in the playoff. That is pathetic. It's pathetic. Neither one of the ACC teams, Clemson or SMU, that they have put in this top 12 are better teams than Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina. Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina are all better teams than SMU and Clemson. So it's kind of like, what are we doing? And and first of all, South Carolina just showed you they're better than Clemson. They just went to their home field in a rivalry game that Clemson definitely wants to win, and you got beat by a team that's not even sniffing the top 15 because they have three losses. It's so it is so ridiculous. Not even funny.
Well, it's funny because I think a big reason why they did it is because they're trying to be like, oh, we don't have SEC bias, so they don't want three SEC teams, in the right. No, sorry, because there's three now. They don't want four. I think that's what it was. Even though
Yeah.
that there's four Big Ten teams, so I don't understand their point there because you have Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. So I think that's what it was. Is they just didn't want four SEC and four Big Ten, and then you have one independent, and then one Big 12. And so I think that's what they were worried about. So like, oh, we got to make the ACC be represented. It's just like I honestly think that's what it is.
Yeah,
So
you're
someone.
right.
So a counter argument, because I know we're going to hear this in the comments and people are going to be talking about this. A big argument is, oh well, you can't penalize a team for losing the conference championship because then you're saying that those games don't matter and that you shouldn't play in the conference championship. So here's my argument for that. SMU shouldn't have been ranked number 8 in the first place. That's really what it comes right. That Nick Saban brought that up, and I'm like, this guy's speaking facts. SMU shouldn't be ranked number 8 in the first place. So I don't so like SMU probably should have been, I would say, below Bama, probably below Ole Miss and some other teams as well. So they should have been, I would say, right outside the top 12, maybe at number 12. So then when Clemson beats them, then we're not having this conversation of, oh man, well, should we say should we drop a team for losing the conference championship? That shouldn't even be a conversation because SMU was ranked too high in the first place. So that's my counter argument to that. EJ, what's your opinion on that? Because that's kind of how I see it. Because people are right. It sucks because I think they're another reason why they did this, other than trying to avoid the you have SEC bias claim, and we're worried about that. I feel like is they're trying to, like I said, have the conference championships mean something, and don't want to have teams go in there and lose and be kicked out. But like I said, I think that as SMU, you're too highly ranked anyway. And because you guys both don't play anybody, or at least since SMU doesn't play anybody, I think it needs to be a Clemson and SMU battle for the playoff spot. I think that's how it should have been for that number 12 seed. And it didn't end up like that. So how do you feel about that argument? How are you feeling about what I'm saying?
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. And again, there are no defined criteria and principles. Um, to me, it should be all relative. Like the conference championship game is an opportunity for you to win your conference championship and get an automatic bid to the playoff, um, which is great. Lane Kiffin also talked about it's too much of a high risk, uh, high reward situation. Like if you lose, can you get dropped out? And I think that got into the mind of the committee. And they were like, well, no, we can't. If you're already ranked in the top 12 and you play in a conference championship game, you shouldn't drop. Then what the hell did you do to Georgia last year, committee? You dropped them out. And Georgia was unequivocally one of the four best teams. I mean, Georgia or Washington.
Yep.
Yeah, Washington was 13-0. I don't care. Georgia was better.
Yep.
So, oh well. And the only reason you had Texas in there is because they beat Alabama.
Yep.
So, the thing is that the conference championship games should all be relative to the current rankings. So you're exactly right. Meaning, if SMU goes into the conference championship game and loses, well, now their whole body of work is now compared to teams that are ranked around them. So an 11-2 SMU team should now be looked at to a 9-3 Alabama or 9-3 Ole Miss or whatever, 10-2 Miami, and you should compare them to them. So to that point, now that SMU's 11-2, it's almost like the committee is saying the conference championship games are not even like they're blips in the matrix, like they don't exist. Like the conference championship game only exists for the winner, not the loser, as though it's not an additional data point on you losing. Because just like people say, well, you have three losses. Well, your loss in the conference championship game is not a loss because it's clearly not a loss. So it's really, really sad. It's a sad day. Now, obviously, people are gonna say in the comments, well, Bama shouldn't have been in because they lost to Vandy. And I'm gonna bang my head against a freaking wall because then I'm gonna say, well, what is the point of winning 4 games against top 20 teams? What is the point of that? There, that has no value. So it's almost like you shouldn't even you shouldn't even care to win those games. And but last thing I'll say on this is like in college basketball, no one talks about losses. No one talks about, well, this is a 12 loss team. That's a 13 loss. No one says that in basketball because it's all about, well, are you above 500 at least? And how many quad one wins do you have against the good teams in the country? Texas A&M in basketball last year, they lost 14 games. They lost 14 games. But because they won 9 games against the quad one, meaning the top 25% of teams, that was the most in the country, the committee said, well, our principle is if you have a lot of wins against the really good teams, you're in, period. You're in. And they put them in the tournament. And when they got in there, they played Houston, who was a number one seed, and they went to the brink with Houston. So I'm like, yeah, Texas A&M is a good team. So they should do the same thing in football because this pathetic loss argument about, well, you got losses, so you shouldn't be up there. The fans are all brainwashed, and you see it in the comments. They all think, well, because you have a loss. Well, yeah, a 12, if you're ranked 12 to 15, you've lost games, people. Like you've lost games. Um, and to me, honestly, it doesn't necessarily mean you're any worse or any better than the teams that could be 5 or 6. Like Alabama versus Boise State tomorrow. Who who's winning that game?
Who's favored? Probably Alabama.
Correct. You are correct. So it's kind of like, but because Boise State is a good team, they're probably, if they were in the SEC, what would be a comparable team to Boise State? Because they do have an elite running back. I mean, he's running all over the place. I mean, Boise State versus Florida tomorrow. Orange and
That's a
blue versus
great
orange and
game.
blue.
Yeah.
What is Boise State like coasting through that game like it's nothing? Like all the fans think they would since they're 11-1 and Florida's a 5 loss team. Florida's trash because they lost 5 games. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. I think it works by what dudes do you have on your team and what style of play do you have and how good's your quarterback and how good's your defense. you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I agree. And it gets even deeper than surface level stuff because people just, I think that's a problem, is people are viewing this as a surface level issue. You know what I mean? When really they dive
Right.
deeper, it's different. And does a team like Georgia, and this is a great point. This is a great point, and I think this is the final argument I want to make on this. Does Georgia need to prove themselves? Did they need to win this conference championship? No, because they have great wins. One, you know what I mean?
They
Did
already beat
does
Texas.
exactly Does SMU need to prove themselves in the conference championship? Yes. So it really comes down to, do you need to prove yourself in the conference championship?
Great
If
point.
you're a team that doesn't need to, then now once again that's not a measurable thing, so it's hard to have that be. But like I feel like that has to be some kind of metric within this. Like you have to, it has to be it has to be a factor. It has to measure in with the consideration, because if you're a team that has great wins like the Georgia Bulldogs, they don't have to prove themselves. Even if they lose against Texas, they don't have to prove themselves. They have great wins. And if you're the SMU, ponies, which by the way, they had a live pony on field. That was kind of cool. I will admit that. If you're
What
the
about the
SMU,
ponies?
it was pretty cool. If you're the SMU ponies, you do have something to prove. So I think that's really what this comes down to. And it's sad to see. I'm gonna be posting something on my Instagram story because I think it's horrific. And I would love to see some counter argument to that, because I genuinely, I don't know. I think it's horrific. But yeah, any other points you want to make, EJ, on the situation? Because here's another thing. I also think that Boise State's a team that had something to prove with their game against UNLV in their conference championship game. Do I think they should have dropped out? I don't know, probably not. But if you look at Boise State's, let's take a look at Boise State's schedule, for example, because I want to bring this up because I'm sure other people will. Boise State's schedule. Let's see. They played Georgia Southern. They win. They played Oregon. They lost by three points against Oregon, which was unbelievable. They beat Portland State. They beat a good Washington State team. They beat Utah State. They beat Hawaii. They beat UNLV. They beat San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose, Wyoming, Oregon State. So their schedule's not great. Their schedule is pretty bad, okay? But here's the thing. So they did have something to prove in that conference championship game, in my opinion. And they won. And they looked good. They looked physical. They looked dominant. And that's the difference here, man. So, I think, I don't know. I think what it really comes down to is Boise State stepped up, SMU did not. And I think that's why Boise State got that number 3 seed, and I think that somehow SMU made the playoff, and that's why I have a big problem with it. But that's all I'm going to say on the situation. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on it. What do you think about my talking points? What do you think about EJ's talking points? Because I think we brought up some good arguments. I think we made some good points. Either way, we have college football, and we have an extended season of college football, so that's exciting. For the next few weeks, we're going to have a lot to talk about. Obviously, this weekend we have the Army-Navy game. But after that, man, some of these great games are going to be popping off, so I'm very excited for that. And then next week we're going to dive into we might create a bracket sometime this week, but next week
Yeah.
we'll break down the bracket. We'll talk about why we think this team's going to win this. We'll crown our national champion for who we think is going to win. We're going to dive into all that fun stuff, which should be a lot of fun. We'll make predictions for each and every game. It's going to be very exciting, and of course, we'll make predictions for the round one of the playoff next week. But yeah, EJ, anything else you want to expand on when it comes to these selections by the committee?
Yeah, man. I think they're slowly starting to potentially release some bowl games here. So
Oh,
we'll be
sweet.
watching what teams are going to be in what bowls, picking those, especially the Gators. It doesn't look like it's been announced yet, but we are continuing to monitor the situation so that everyone will be able to know who we're going to be playing. Um, but yeah, man, I just think overall, it's interesting. Like Arizona State, um, they played Mississippi State earlier in the year, who went 0-8 in the SEC, by the way. Um, and Arizona State dominated the game between the 20s, um, but only won by a touchdown. I remember watching a few clips of that game. That was a relatively close game for Arizona State on the season when you look at, overall. And think about that for a second. Mississippi State is the worst team in the SEC. They did not win a game in the SEC. Um, but they go to Arizona State and only lose by a touchdown. Um, and that's the argument that we have with teams like Alabama and Ole Miss is that they look forward to the Mississippi State game as like, okay, we finally get to rest a little bit against the worst team who's taking the Big 12 champion to the brink,
Right.
right? So, that's the other thing that's not really factored in. I think the committee was very clear, make it to the conference championship game if you want to get into the playoff. Um, so, I think if they just come out and say that, they just should come out and say, if you make the conference championship game, you're in. Then I think people like what's a majigger? Lane Kiffin will say, "Oh, okay, well, there's an incentive to making the conference championship game then, I guess." Because if you look at it, everyone who was in the conference championship game pretty much was in except Iowa State, which the Big 12 is I don't know why the Big 12 is not that highly ranked in football. Um,
Which was really weird. I mean, Colorado is
yeah.
a team that would beat SMU in my opinion. It's unbelievable that how they got treated as well.
Right, like Colorado or SMU. Like, there's really no difference between the Big 12 and the ACC, in my opinion.
Nope.
But in fact, you could argue that the Big 12 is better than the ACC
Well,
in football
one other thing,
this year.
you brought up a good point too. I want to talk about. You said that how if you make the conference championship, you're in, right? That kind of point there. I think that's a good point, and I want to bring up something real quick, EJ. How are you going to tell me that SMU was ranked that much higher than Clemson, right? Clemson has a harder schedule. They uh they beat South Carolina, right? On that last right they beat South Carolina. So
Wait,
you
no, South Carolina beat Clemson.
wait, South did they beat Clemson?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
why the SEC is better and should be in.
Okay, well then I'll just yeah, I'll just I'll just shut up then. Never mind. I had a point I was gonna make, but I'll just stop. Yeah, because Lenora Sellers went off. Okay. Anyways, continue with your point.
Yeah, there just needs to be some more principles, and I think next year there will be some changes to the format. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. You know, there are some bowls that have started to be announced. So there's um, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, Memphis versus West Virginia in Frisco,
What are
Texas.
these names?
The Boca Raton Bowl, Western Kentucky versus James Madison. The R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, Georgia Southern versus Sam Houston. Ohio versus Jacksonville State in the Staff DNA Cure Bowl. USF or San Jose State in the Hawaii Bowl. I'll be going to that. My nephew is on
Hey.
USF, so we'll be going to that. But there's a lot of bowls that still have not been announced. One of my favorite bowls, the Pop Tarts Bowl. Dude, you
Hey.
got to go to that Pop Tarts Bowl.
I went there last year with it was um wait, was it the Pop Tarts one I went to? It was the North Carolina State and Kansas State game. And it was it was in the Orlando Caping World Stadium. I love going to those games. It's so much fun. The Cheez-It Bowl's there too.
I mean, who would not want to just win that game and just eat a box of Pop Tarts at midfield? Like that would be the absolute best. Strawberry
Facts.
frosting, Pop Tarts. They are the best. Um, Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. And technically Florida could be slated to play in any of these bowls. Um, and they are going to be announced over the next hour or so. Um, so, we'll see. But, back to what we were saying, I think it's a complete joke when you look at these rankings and you look at who teams beat and who teams played. The 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 how you get in is based on the fact that you didn't lose. So if the onus is on teams to reduce the number of losses, then they're going to make schedule accommodations to do that, which means playing easier non-conference games so that you get a little bit of a rest um, prior to playing these tough conference games. Um, and teams like Tennessee got a little bit of an easy draw this year in the SEC. And their win over Alabama is why Tennessee's in the in the field. Because when you look at Tennessee's schedule, like who did Tennessee beat? I
Right.
mean, I know they're a good team. I mean, I Tennessee is a really good team, but who did they beat other than Alabama, who's not in? You know,
Yep.
Florida is technically their second best win. But there was no debate about Tennessee, which is mind-boggling to me. The debate was about well, actually, Miami was completely thrown out. So I'm like, okay, if you can throw Miami out, Logan, let's talk about this. If you can throw Miami completely out like yesterday's trash for losing to Syracuse, who, if Indiana or if SMU had to play Syracuse, I'd probably pick Indiana, but it would be a game. They threw them out like yesterday's trash after they were in the top 10 the whole year. Remember? They're in the top 10 the whole year. And then, no, you lost. You're trash. And they throw them out. But they're still 10-2. SMU's 11-2. So Miami beat Louisville and Duke. SMU beat Louisville and Duke. Neither one of them played Clemson in the regular season. Why is it Miami in over SMU?
Definitely definitely their record against their conference. But I'm going online right now. I want to see, because what I don't understand is like I get that the more conference games you win, the higher you'll be ranked. But do you also feel like the strength of the conference games that you do play should factor in? That's what I'm curious about.
Yes. Yes.
I'm looking at the strength of schedule right now. And I'm gonna break this down. So you continue with that point.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to find SMU compared to Miami. So Miami, actually, I'll say it right now. Miami is the 59th hardest schedule in college football. I'm just on collegefootballnetwork.com. SMU is the 64th. So Miami has a harder ranked schedule. Um. Uh. Yes. Wait. Yeah, Miami has a harder schedule than SMU. So, is it big enough to make to make that statement? I don't know. It's only by like 4 or 5 spots. Um, but I feel like yeah, it has to be brought to the attention. It's tough. Here's another thing. SMU played Louisville, right?
Yep.
What was that score? Let me look it up. SMU versus Louisville was 34-27. Okay. Miami versus Louisville was 52-45.
Mm.
So two very even games there. Um, oof, this is crazy, man. These are two very close teams when it comes to performance. I'm trying to find another team that they both played. Um, but yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the committee might have dropped. I agreed with them at first, but I think they might have dropped them a little far down. Um,
Well, they just came out with the top 25, the full ranking, so you can kind of see.
hmm,
Um, Here's the crazy thing. So, and fans, like I have some people who are, casual college football fans, they understand like the top 12 gets in, but it's hard to explain it to them because when you look at this poll, Alabama is ranked number 11, but we say they're not in, and Clemson is ranked number 16, and we say they're in. And so people are, well, I thought it was the top 12. And so it's kind of like, well, it is the top 12, but it's basically the conference champions and the highest ranked seven who aren't a conference champion. I mean, that's
That's
technically how they
crazy.
do it.
That's crazy. I'm looking at the same thing right now. That is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's the five conference champions, so the four power four and the one mid-major, and then the highest ranked seven teams after that. So Alabama is not one of those highest ranked seven teams. That because they happen to play in the SEC where you have multiple teams who are better than all the other conference shit. Like think about this.
Wow.
Ole Miss. Now I know that Florida beat Ole Miss. And I get that. Ole Miss also lost to Kentucky egregiously. But let's think about Ole Miss just from a statistical standpoint. I mean, their stats are insane. Ole Miss versus, let's just go down the line. Ole Miss versus Indiana, Boise State, SMU, Arizona State. Who's favored? Who wins? I mean,
Yeah. This is that is insane to me. The fact that SMU is ranked above Alabama and above Arizona State. I guess because they're ranked all the way at 8 and they didn't want to drop them that much. But like you said, Georgia dropped down 5 spots. Or 6 spots, whatever it was. This is crazy, man. It's
yeah,
like you got
yeah.
to be consistent.
Why did they do that last year? I mean,
This is
because
crazy.
and some people say, well, this year's a completely different year. It's 12 teams. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, yeah, but the committee chairman was on the TV screen last week talking about when they asked him the question, he was like, well, we could do like what we did 3 years ago, where TCU stayed at number three when in their conference championship game, and they didn't move. And I was kind of like, okay, so you're referencing 2022. So the guiding principle from 2022. But this year's a completely different year, is what everyone's saying in the comment section. And how did that work out for you when you kept TCU number three when they were trash and shouldn't have been anywhere near the top four? So these committee people are complete jokes. Um, so, I get it. 12 teams should be in. We shouldn't really be having this debate because, like you and I, Logan, we said 12 is too much anyway. It should really just be the top six. Like I
Yep.
would probably do the top six. Now, how do you feel about it being mandatory that a conference champion gets in? I like it if it's 12 teams. I don't think I like it if it's four or six. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, no, no. If it's 4 and 6, man, you just got to go off basic rankings. There's
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
there
I
there's
agree.
no there's no automatic seeds. There's nothing like that. I think you just have to go off the actual seedings. Which by the way, to me, just solves a bunch of problems. Like the main one in this one being the fact that uh an 11-2 Arizona State team that I would say has a better resume is 2 spots below a 11-2 SMU team. It what are we doing? I it just it's
What are we doing?
just doesn't make
What
any sense.
what okay, this is what the committee chairman needs to tell us. Okay, committee chairman, all-knowing czar. It's like Wizard of Oz. What is SMU? What did they do to prove they're better than Alabama and Arizona State? And I know what people in the comments are going to say. They're going to say, well, they didn't lose to Vandy. Okay, but you beat your best win is against a team that is statistically equal to Vanderbilt. so,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? So it's just a complete. And notice how Louisville is used as a top win for all these teams. SMU, uh, well, Louisville actually beat Clemson, but Louisville is not even in the top 25 of the playoff, nor is Duke.
They have no top 25 wins. It's
Boise
crazy.
State at least beat UNLV, who's
Two
number
times.
24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So who did Indiana beat?
All right.
Illinois? I guess they beat, let me see. No, Michigan. And Michigan's not even in here.
Well, and then Miami, two losses, right? Miami, one loss to a number 21 Syracuse team, and then one loss to a Georgia Tech team, which went nose to nose with Georgia. I would take that resume over SMU's all day.
Oh, for sure.
I
Like,
don't get it, man.
if you're telling me SMU and the ACC championship game to me was win and you're in, lose and you're out. That was, to me, that's what that game should have been. But this committee fell in love with SMU for some reason. And I know we're going to get SMU fans and people from Texas, and they're going to say, you're trash. We're trashing SMU. I'm like, dude, 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 how is SMU in the top 10 of these rankings? Like, I mean, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, if you don't play anyone, you have to win all your games. If you play a lot of good teams, you're afforded losing because, like you said earlier, you have nothing to. You've proven you can beat the top teams. Alabama is one loss more than SMU, but has a win over number 2 Georgia in their rankings.
Mm-hmm.
They also beat number 15 South Carolina and number 19 Missouri and LSU, who's 17th in the FPI, but hell, LSU versus Colorado, UNLV, Memphis, Iowa State, BYU, who's favored? You know?
Yeah, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Yeah, it's crazy,
Wow.
man. I mean, I think I said everything I need to say about SMU. Look, I'm not like they're a good team. They are a good football team, but a deserving the top 12 is just an absolute joke to me. I hate the system. The fact that it's number 16 Clemson team, which by the way, lost to number 15 South Carolina, gets in, but South Carolina doesn't. What are like? By the way, South Carolina's lost to Bama. They have 3 losses. One loss to number 11 Alabama. I, just
It's a joke.
I
It's a
don't I don't
joke.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's a joke.
It's very weird. What are South Carolina's other losses? Let me see. A loss to
South Carolina.
to LSU
South.
and Ole
Yep.
Miss. They lost to Ole Miss. So they lost to a number 14 Ole Miss team and a loss to an LSU team, which, like you said, the FPI, they're top, what, number 17, 16?
Yep.
That
And
is unbelievable.
South Carolina beat Texas A&M, who's not in here, but I think they're in the top 25 in the FPI. And they blew out Texas A&M. That was like they dog walked them, way worse than what Texas did. They also beat Missouri, who's somehow Missouri's in here, but Texas A&M isn't in here. I don't know. And then they beat Clemson, who's the ACC champ. But because South Carolina plays in the SEC, let's just be real. Because they play in the SEC, and there's 7 legitimately good teams in the SEC this year, and you're tied for 5th place, you're not going.
I mean, dude, South Carolina's 3 losses, 3 points to LSU, got beat pretty good by Ole Miss, but a 2-loss L to at Alabama. They had a great win over Vandy at Vandy. Great win. They destroyed Oklahoma at Oklahoma like Alabama could not. They destroyed Texas A&M. They got the win over Missouri. They beat Clemson. Like I genuinely don't get how it's just this whole thing's a joke. Now I'm running in circles. I'm saying the same thing over and over. But look, I mean, it is what it is. we can't do anything about it. I think that's why we need to use BCS and not a committee.
Yes, this
Because
committee.
opinionated stuff. Someone showed us a live footage of them watching the games. They had no beer, no chips and dip, no cool lights or anything. It was just them sitting.
Trash.
It was like that's not an atmosphere. These guys don't know what they're doing. So yeah, crazy stuff.
Trash.
That's all I'm gonna say on it. I think it's insane. And then I have some bowl projections too. The latest bowl projections for Florida that I want to talk about in a minute. But what are your final thoughts on it, EJ?
Um, I wanted to touch on one thing you said about the Penn State Oregon game. Drew Aller. So Penn State is a funny team. Like they, it's all relative for them. Like they never just come out and just wax a good team or come out firing out of the gate. They always want the game to be relatively close, but because Oregon jumped out on top of them, now they have to open up the playbook and let Drew Aller do his thing. I'm like, okay, open up the playbook from the opening kickoff, James Franklin. That's my problem with him is it's like you got to go into this game with a killer instinct. And we only if we're losing do we let Drew Aller go out there and do his thing. And Penn State really played a really good game. I thought the stats in that game were pretty impressive. I think they
Yeah, it's for the yards. I mean, Penn State outgained them 523 to 469.
yeah, yeah, like that doesn't surprise me. I think Penn State uh also ran the ball. They were running all over them when I. So I was like, okay, Penn State's about to easily come back here. But because they had the early turnover, they got behind early by, I think they were down 14, 21-7 or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, Now all of a sudden they have to play comeback. So, that'll be interesting to see what happens. Then lastly, Bama versus Penn State, that would have been a game people would actually want to tune in. But Penn State versus SMU, we're kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So that's my only comment there. But all in all, it is what it is. Um, we can't do anything about it. But again, we're SEC homers, or at least I am. Logan's more of a objective observer than me. Um, I'm just kind of like, SEC is gonna win, so put them in there.
There you go. Hey, smart man. Don't blame you. Yeah, no, I mean we could just kind of touch on some of the games too.
Yeah.
I mean you have like you were talking about Oregon and Penn State, man. I just gained so much respect for them, and yeah, I mean running the ball, they were really. It's just those two turnovers for Penn State really got them in this game, and just came out horrible times. And Oregon, man, I mean I've only seen them play in like 2-3 games this year, 2 games maybe, not counting this one. And they're such a fun team to watch. This is one of the most they're just one of the most fun teams I've had the privilege of watching, up there with like 2019, LSU and all that. Like they got so much speed with Tez Johnson and these receivers on the outside. They can run the football. Dylan Gabriel he throws one of the most pretty footballs. I mean, it's insane, dude. So yeah, just a really fun game, hurdles, all kinds of stuff. It was exciting for sure. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oregon. I saw Dylan Gabriel in one of his very first games. We went to the Florida A&M, which is I graduated from there too, and UCF game uh in Orlando. I think it was like 4 years ago. Had to
mhm.
be 4 years ago now. Um, and I turned and looked at my friend, and Dylan Gabriel was a true freshman, and I turned and looked, and told my friend, I was like, and this is back when Hypo was there. I was like, dude, this Dylan Gabriel guy, I know it's FAMU. I mean, but this guy's throwing some pretty nice balls here. Even if it is, you're playing an FCS team. And sure enough, 4 years later, he's like transferring every 5 minutes to see who's got the best NIL deal
Yeah.
in his minivan, and got this team. playing really well. I mean, they destroyed Illinois, they destroyed Michigan, um, they destroyed Washington. So they did what they needed to do to be where they are. So now they didn't play. Well, they did beat Ohio State. It was a close game, but we'll see what they do in the playoff. I mean, they would in theory play Ohio State if Ohio. Man, we got to talk about Ryan Day. I know you mentioned him, but man, Ryan Day.
What a guy.
Ryan
What a guy.
Ryan, what a day. Ryan, what a day. You got to win, man. You got to beat Tennessee.
Got to. There's literally no other. You got to at this point. Yeah, Army destroys Tulane. Tulane's a good football team. Huge win for Army. Gained a lot of respect and made Notre Dame look better. So good win for them.
Yeah, great win for the
Two
Army. It's
two
just
passes by Army the entire game.
they're a freight train.
Hmm.
But again, athlete for athlete, when they played Notre Dame, it just wasn't working out for them. So, that whole rushing attack, now they did probably end up with a lot of rushing yards, but uh, you know, uh, why aren't people crying about Army not getting it?
Yeah, yeah, very true. Our
Yeah,
troops.
put the troops in.
Facts.
They're 11-1, people. Why aren't they why aren't they Army versus SMU playing game? Like, let's go.
That's true. That's funny. That's a good one. That's you're not lying though, man. Uh,
Well, what if Army didn't play Notre Dame this
right,
year?
right.
Like, because that's just a game. They're both independents. I think that's just a game that. Wait, are they independents? No,
Uh,
they're champions.
no, they're AAC champions.
So because they're not ranked higher than Boise is why they don't get in. Is that the
Yeah, um, yeah, because Boise's ranked higher. Um,
okay?
so
Yeah.
that's why they didn't get in.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. The Clemson and SMU game worked out like um, how the committee thought the Group of Five championship would work out. If that makes sense. Clemson ranked number 16. You know what I mean? And they expected maybe the conference winner of the AAC to be ranked number 16, whatever, and then jump in. So I think that's how it was planned out to be, and obviously didn't fall that way. And I think
Yeah.
that they just were freaking out. I think they were scared. I think everyone was scared. They're like, this is not playing out the way we want it to be. This is not good. So that's why this is a great year of college football, man. It's just so many losses, so many good football teams that just fell apart in some games. So, but I agree, man. Army looking like a little feisty team now. Gonna be
Yeah,
fun in the
man.
bowl game.
I hope we don't have to play them in a bowl game.
So speaking of that, let's go through the projections real quick. So the projections, the latest ones say this was like an hour ago. Florida versus Washington State in the Las Vegas Bowl. I know you like that.
Yeah.
That's a great game, by the way. Washington State's a good little football team. Florida versus Duke in the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. Florida versus Washington State in the Las Vegas Bowl again. Florida versus Duke in the Gator TaxSlayer Bowl. Florida versus North Carolina and the Gasparilla Bowl. Florida versus Michigan and the Reliquest Bowl in Tampa as well. And then Florida versus Duke in the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. So it's really down to 3 bowl games. That's
Uh-oh. I think you froze up on me there. Just looking at these bowls. Now they're saying um Florida versus Texas Tech in the Liberty Bowl. Listen, guys. as a Florida fan that has been to several of these bowls, um, I do not want to go to Memphis or Birmingham for a bowl. Like that's like punishment. That's not, like we're already not in the playoff. Send us to a nice, like nothing against Memphis or Birmingham, but they're not like destinations.
We were talking about it's looking like it's going to be against Duke, or Duke or North Carolina, or sorry, Duke, North Carolina, maybe Washington State, maybe Michigan, but Duke comes up a lot. And the most out of these, so that'd be a good matchup. I like Duke a lot. They're a good little team, 9-3. I think that'd be pretty exciting. And either way, I'll probably go to those because those are both going to be in Florida. Las Vegas would be fun though too. I know you said you'd go to that one, so
Yeah, man. Yeah, so Duke would be in the Gator Bowl,
yeah,
I
it's
guess.
looking like Duke will be the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl in Jacksonville.
That was so interesting. Because how they do it is okay, so once all the SEC teams are in the playoff, then it goes to, well, now Alabama is not in the playoff. So now they're probably the top SEC team that's going to be going to a bowl. Like, can you imagine like Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina are in bowl games that are not play, like what is the mentality of those teams? Or, I could see Ole Miss having a lot of players not want to play in the bowl game. Um, I think South Carolina, a lot of players probably would play.
Right.
Alabama, I don't know. I could see a lot of people not wanting to play in Alabama's bowl. Um,
Oh, for sure. I mean, a lot of guys going to the NFL. I agree.
yeah, yeah, and so I think how they have a hierarchy. I don't have the hierarchy list, but basically it's a draft, and the bowl leaders or whoever's on the selection committee for these bowl games, they get like there's an order, and then they get to select the SEC teams, and that usually happens around 2 p.m. Eastern time, 11, 12, 21. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so it should be happening like right now. And what's going to happen is they want to select the teams that are the higher ranked teams that'll bring the most money. Um, but here's the interesting part about it. Like, if you put Ole Miss in one of your bowl games, Ole Miss isn't really going to want to be there. So half their team's not going to play. Their whole defensive line isn't going to play. So
Right.
is it, did you really make a right decision picking Ole Miss to go to the bowl game?
Right.
Because when you select these teams, you don't really know. You're not like asking them, hey, are your best players going to play? Um,
But just off brand alone.
yeah, it's just off brand alone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. Like I said, I would like any of those games. I think they sound great. Michigan would be a fun one too. So we will see what comes out. And of course, like I said, follow us on Instagram, SwampCast Pod, and we will be posting updates there.
Yep.
So yeah, so like I said, we'll go through some of these games. We already talked about Tulane and Army. We both picked Tulane. Tulane was favored by 4.5. Or sorry, we both picked Tulane. Army wins. Tulane was favored by 4.5. Both took an L there. Um, Next one we have is Boise State, favored by 3.5, hosting UNLV. We both picked Boise State to win and to cover, and they did. This game kind of looked, um, you know, exactly how I thought it would look, man. I mean, Ashton Genty just having one hell of a game, and this one again. The Boise State crowd just seeing a conference championship, because when you're in the power, or not power four, not power five, but the group of five, whatever they are now. They mix everything up now, dude, with all this conference realignment. They actually host the conference games at the highest seeds home field. And yeah, to see a conference championship on the blue turf, to see this rematch, it's become an actual rivalry game, which is really fun. And Yeah, this game was great, man. I mean, UNLV just really never able to get going. Their running or their quarterback was just not accurate for UNLV. Williams, Malik Williams, just could not get anything going. 13 of 28, 110 yards, one interception. They ran the ball pretty well on the ground at some points, but Boise State, I mean, Ashton Genty, 32 carries for 200 yards, 6.5 yards a carry, huge 75-yard run, I believe in the second quarter, and one touchdown for Genty. So it's crazy when you look at Boise State's rushing. When you look at a lot of people's stats, a lot of team stats, when it comes to running the ball, there'll be like 4 different guys that touch it. Literally, the only running back that took a carry in this game was Ashton Genty for Boise State, which is hilarious. But yeah, good game from Boise State. Deserved to get in the playoff with that win.
Yeah, great win for they started off hot and then kind of UNLV kind of woke up on defense late in the second half there.
Yeah,
Boise State didn't even score in the second half, but the 14 points would have won in the game. Um, I think you brought up a good point the other week about the attrition of a player like Ashton Genty. Like Billy Napier for Florida has we need minimum two running backs, three running backs. You're not going to get more than 12 carries in a game. I don't think any of our running backs have gotten more than 12 carries in a game. And that's his philosophy on keeping guys fresh and keeping that running game going, which is why we typically are able to run the ball because our running backs are always fresh and when they're getting their carries. But a guy like Genty, 32 carries, like that's more carries than like Jaden Baugh would get. It would take him 4 games to
yeah,
get 32 carries.
yeah,
So it's crazy. So it's kind of like Boise State is now projected to play Penn State, who would that be at Boise State? I guess so.
for what?
If Penn State beats SMU,
Yeah, it's at Boise State. Yeah,
okay, so it'll be all blue. That'll be a very interesting
gonna be
situation.
crazy. Gonna be insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be Merry Christmas to James Franklin.
Yeah.
Um, the Penn State defense, which is pretty good, it's just like, okay, geniuses, stop Genty.
Hmm.
Okay, that you got one job. Um, Ironically, I think like, if we had to play Boise State, I think we could probably do that, we could probably give them a good little run. But great, great, great win for Boise. Let's see what they can do in the playoff against either SMU or Penn State.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Arizona State and Boise State are very similar in a lot of ways. Because they can run the ball like crazy with their star running backs, but their
Yeah.
quarterbacks, Madison for Boise State's really solid. Like how I would probably play Boise State is play an eight man front every single time and make Madison beat us in the air with his arm. But I'll tell you right now, watching that game, he can do that. This kid can throw the ball really well. Same thing with Arizona State and Levitt. He's a guy, that they rely on Scadaboo a lot running the football, but he can really throw the ball as well, really well. So it's tough, man. And I agree. You just have to stop him. The problem is most teams do stop Genty, but he just has this big run or these 2 big runs every game where he breaks 3 tackles and he's gone. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at his yards per carry most of the time this year. It's like 3 yards per carry, whatever. And it's because he gets stuffed at the line 80% of the time. But then this man, number one, takes like 5 guys to bring him down. So if you try to get 2 guys to tackle him, he's getting off to both those guys. So I agree.
Yeah.
It's a very hard team to defend, and it'll be a fun game when Penn State does beat SMU because SMU shouldn't be there. And it's going to be at Boise State, blue turf. Going to be a crazy environment, man, even though because they just took that goal post down and everything, man. Boise State's a fun atmosphere. Next game, Iowa State at Arizona State. Well, not at Arizona State. This is a conference championship now. Arizona State favored by 2.5, and they get it done. They dominate this game. I mean, it was absolutely insane. They win 45-19. Iowa State garbage time touchdown or garbage time score there late. But really the game was 45 to 10. And it was, I mean, absolutely insane. I thought Iowa State could make it close in that third quarter, and it was the total opposite. Arizona State started pulling away. Rocco Beck for the quarterback for Iowa State, horribly timed interception. And then, of course, you have Cam Scatterby for Arizona State, 16 carries, 170 yards, it's almost 11 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. I mean, this guy had so many explosive runs in this game. It was insane. It was like you look away. It was like when you watch UFC and like you go to get something from your kitchen or something and you hear, "Oh my God, he's hurt," and you run back in. It was like this game. The game was already over, but there was no other game to watch. So I went to go get something from the kitchen, and I just hear in the background, "He's gone to the 50-40." It's just like, oh my God, this guy you can't stop him. So yeah, Scatterby, absolute legend. Great win for Arizona State. They look like a very scary team that could be the team that upsets some teams in the playoff. We'll see.
Yeah. Scatterby that should definitely be his first name. Like I kind of feel like Scatterby Davis, like
Yeah,
that would be kind of Scatterby Jackson,
there you
that
go.
like that's like, but uh he's who does he reminds me of like uh, there was a running back who just like you just couldn't tackle. But anyway, he's really, really good. The thing is, the highlight of this game was how the game kind of turned. Iowa State kind of dominated the first 5 minutes, but then Arizona State just started to go back to the well and exert their will. And then the other thing was that whole targeting call on the sack. And
Hmm.
I know Logan, we were texting and it was kind of like, okay, is it targeting? It's like, oh man, this is the biggest hit I've ever seen. I looked at and I was like, oh God, I gotta check this hit out. And I was kind of like, okay, um, since he's defined as a defenseless player, meaning he's not in a position to absorb, to expect to be tackled, I'm kind of like, well, how are you in a position where you're not expecting to be tackled? Because it's football and you have the ball in your hand. But anyway, um, so he gets hit in the head or neck area, and they say it's targeting. It's you're the worst player in the country. You're ejected, and now he can't play in the first game in the first half,
Hmm.
which I think is the stupidest rule. But I didn't think it was targeting. But I guess since he's defenseless and it's to the head or neck area it's targeting. So I just think they should go to two-hand touch of the quarterback, give them all like yellow jerseys, two-hand touch. So then we don't have to worry about the quarterback being injured from being hit, you know? Um, so there, or people getting suspended.
Or we just go back to helmet, not targeting. Helmet to helmet was a great call. Helmet to helmet was a great flag because, hey, if you go in, you lead with your head and you connect with another guy's head, that's helmet to helmet. But now it's, hey, if you hit him with your shoulder in the head or neck area, it's targeting. It's insane. It's like, how do you tackle? That's also an argument or
Yeah.
a conversation that me and EJ had. It's like, you can't hit him low because it's rough in the pasture. You can't hit him high, it's targeting. You got to hit him in the chest, but that's hard to do when you're going 50 miles an hour. I don't get it. Anyway, weird.
Yeah, just give them like a big body bag and then they run at you and just like put the body bag over you.
Literally, dude. It's
Or
it's
or
it's insane.
or a big pillow. Like they can just they can pull out a big pillow from under their jersey and then just use that to hit you. Um, that's what we could use. Pillow
Crazy.
fight. Pillow fight.
Crazy. Uh Next one we have Clemson playing SMU in the ACC championship game. SMU favored by 2.5. You picked SMU. I picked Clemson. Clemson comes out with the W 34-31 in this game. Clemson was pulling away. I mean, this game was 24-7 at half. And then SMU fourth quarter makes a crazy comeback with 17 points and makes it close. And honestly, the game should have gone to overtime. Should
Yes.
have. Should have gone to overtime, but then let me see if I can find the guy's name, dude. I think it was number 8. Well, that was his number for Clemson, right here. Adam Randall, this guy with a huge kick return, a 41-yard kick return, brings it all the way back to, I believe, like the 45 maybe.
Yeah.
And then they have one play where Klubnik finds a guy. They get to like the 40-something yard line in SMU territory, and they go for like a 56-yard field goal. And this true freshman kicker, which is one of the best kickers of all time out of high school, comes in, kicks a bomb. Clemson with a walk-off field goal win for the ACC championship. Absolutely insane. One of the best finishes you'll see. This game was unbelievable because the game was over. SMU comes back. You're thinking, oh my God, what's happening? And then you go, oh, it's going to overtime. Nope, big kick return. Big play given up by SMU, and Clemson wins the game by a huge kick by a freshman kicker. Sounds like a movie. Huge win. I wanted that win so bad because I was like, I need to catch up to EJ's score on the all-time spread picks, and I needed this win. I got it. I'm happy.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Yeah. SMU didn't wake up until the second half, and the turnovers in the first minutes of the game. Now Clemson's up 14-0, and I'm just like, it reminds me of the Arkansas game that we played Arkansas a couple years ago in the swamp, and then I'm just like, I got my $8 hot dog, and I'm going back to my seat, and it's 14-0 Arkansas. And I'm like, what the hell is happening? How's it 14-0 Napier? And so now you have to fight, you have to claw your way back in the game. The kick-off return was absolutely trash for SMU. You got to kick that through the back of the end zone. You cannot let them return a kick 40-something yards. Like, what are you doing? I also wanted SMU to go for 2 at the end of the game, even though it wouldn't have mattered because Clemson would have won with the field goal. I'm like, did you come to the ACC championship game to win, or did you come to lose? And then I think someone might have dialed up the ACC coach and say, hey, SMU, if you lose, you still go to the playoff. So let them return the kickoff 40 years. I mean, I don't know. So this was a game where I could see it happening, Clemson winning, but at the end of the day, Dabo Sweeney got SMU into the playoff because he, at the end of the game, was like, man, they deserve to be in the playoff. They made a comeback on us.
Yeah.
So now SMU's in.
Crazy. Next game, Penn State against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. That's weird to say. Oregon favored by 3.5. We both picked Oregon, and Oregon covers, and they win. Huge game for Oregon. We already kind of touched on this earlier, talking about Drew Aller and James Franklin and everything. But, yeah, big win. Gained a lot of respect for Penn State, man.
Yeah, great win for Oregon. Penn State, James Franklin just doesn't have, there still has not been that signature win yet.
Nope.
So
it's weird.
And if they beat SMU, that's not going to count. Yeah.
What scares me is that might have been Penn State's best performance under James Franklin, and they still lose like that. That's what I'm worried about, but we'll see. They might still be able to get better without those turnovers. Next game, Georgia against Texas in Atlanta in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, SEC Championship. Texas favored by 2.5, and Georgia comes in and dominates. The stat of the game is Texas only having 31 rushing yards in this game. I mean, it was insane. They just could not run the football. Sorry, let's see. It is, 31 rushing yards, counting Quinn Ewers' sacks. But if you get rid of his sacks, it's about close to 60 rushing yards, which is still horrific. The longest rush of the day was 15 yards. The running back, Wisner, was averaging 2.5 yards a carry. And you can't, Quinn Ewers had a great game, 27, 46, 358 yards, but two interceptions that came at bad times, two bad interceptions, one early on, which gave Georgia um, a chance there early. Um, but um, but yeah, this game though, man, with Georgia or with Texas is Texas plays has a very unique offense. They love quick passes. They like passes over the middle a lot as well. And they were really hitting on some deep shots early on in this game, like really these deep balls that Georgia was giving up, and it was looking nice. And then they went away from that and tried to run the ball because what hurt them in the original Georgia game that they got destroyed at Austin in, they could not run the ball. And they finally started being able to run the ball later on in the year, which attributed to a lot of success for them and made them the number, 2 team in the country, whatever they were. But so they tried to establish a run game here instead of trying to keep taking the top off of this Georgia defense, and it didn't really work out well for them. And they just kept trying to run the ball, and I just didn't understand why they kept trying to do it. It wasn't working. Like I said, they had 22 carries in this game with no success, and I just don't get why you're going to try to keep running the ball when you don't have anything there. Georgia just kept playing heavy. It was weird. They weren't even really loading the box. It's just Texas could not run the ball on that front four of Georgia, and they just couldn't get anything going. And that's how Georgia won this football game. So props to Texas, or props to Georgia. Props to this Georgia defense from stopping Texas. Carson Beck goes down in the last play of the half. Gunnar Stockton comes in, plays okay. He's 12 of 16, but only 4 yards a pass. He did not play great, in my opinion. A guy that I think has the ceiling of being an average quarterback, but nothing great.
Yeah, lots of great storylines in this game. Texas can beat everyone in America except Georgia, apparently. Georgia needed a Florida Gator to actually beat Texas, who destroyed Florida. Um, the quarterback gets hurt with the arm, but the committee used that excuse to keep FSU out of the playoff last year. But because it's an automatic qualifier, you can't use that to keep Georgia out. Um, Beck is getting an MRI, so depending on the severity of the sprain, which he was able to come back in and hand the ball off. So um, at the end, but depending on the severity of that sprain, that will change the direct trajectory of Georgia, or it could be an advantage. Stockton, I don't think was incredible, but I don't think he was awful either. He kind of looked like Graham Mertz to me out there, kind of throwing those quick little passes, getting them off. I think it was 12 of 16, which is a very Graham Mertz type of performance. He did throw that interception though late in the game, which I wouldn't blame him. I think that was the Georgia coaches. It's 3rd and 13. You're trying to you ideally would want to score a touchdown, but you do not want to force the ball. I would have just ran. I was like, screen, run a screen, run a screen, run a screen, give him something easy and get your running backs in the open field and see if they can get a block and get the first down. And then they drop him back, and a screen would have been perfect because they blitzed, and he just throws it. I don't even know who he just threw it up and got picked off. I'm like,
There was not a Georgia guy in the area either. It's weird.
yeah, there wasn't I was just like, why would y'all make this call? But anyway, back to Texas really quick. Yeah, man, their offense is very similar to the 2020 Florida offense when we had Kyle Trask, and we just the offensive line could pass block, and we had a lot of great receivers and a really good quarterback, and we could throw it all over the place, but we couldn't run it at all. And that's a limitation for this Texas team, because in these games where you're playing a team that is fully balanced across the board, like Georgia is, have a good defense, have a good offense, have a you now are playing against a team that you can't just outscore with your offense. You actually have to play, you have to be able to throw punches that land, with your running game. And, throwing the ball 50 times on Georgia is not going to be successful because you've got to be able to me, if you're playing Georgia, 20 to 25 passes should be the most that you do, and then you're running the football on them. Florida before what's-a-majigger got hurt. Um, I thought we were doing a decent job running the football on them. Ole Miss even, I think, ran the ball a little bit better against Georgia just to keep them honest.
Hmm.
And Jackson Dart didn't have 30 passes on Georgia. I think he had like 25 attempts. So you got to be balanced against him. But Sarkisian just wants to throw, 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 throw. And if you throw 50 times, two of those passes are going to get picked off. That's just one out of every 15 are going to get intercepted when you're playing Georgia. So it's just, you're going to end up costing yourself the game by doing that. And then also, the thing I've noticed with Georgia is uh, when you're looking at their defense, um, great athletes across the board. Um, if you can power run and then also have a deep threat down the field, that's the sweet spot that you can play Georgia. If it's anything other than that, like if your offense isn't set up to run the ball and then throw it deep, you're going to have issues playing against them overall, which is why I think DJ Lagway was very successful because we all we do is hand it off, power run, and go deep.
Hmm.
Um, because it forces Georgia to, okay, they can actually run it on our front four, and we got to defend the deep pass. So it'll be interesting to see what Georgia, who are they, who's their second round game against
Uh,
potential.
Let me see real
Oh,
quick.
Notre Dame. Ooh,
Hmm. It's gonna be a fun
that
one.
that'll be an interesting game now that you're saying it. So, okay.
That's gonna be a great game. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's gonna be exciting. At Sanford too. Um, yeah, I agree. It's just it's I don't know, man. Texas has to get some run game going consistently in these playoff games. If they want to be successful, and it's just like you were talking about. You have to be able to run the ball,
Yeah.
and 2 yards of carry is not going to do it, especially against Georgia. So hopefully they can get something going here. Texas can, because you got to be able to run the football consistently against these big front sevens, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's gonna be it. So the final record for this week was 5-1 for me, 4-2 for EJ, which
No!
puts me at 31-30. I'm above 500 on the year. EJ 32-29. So you're still above me. You got me by one. So we still have a lot of games we got to predict. We obviously have to do all the playoff games. So anything can happen in those games. Can be very exciting, very cool. I was just on my phone looking up any update of the bowl projection for Florida. Nothing has come out yet. So no telling when we're gonna get something. Because it should be out now. But if it's gonna be
So,
the January 2nd bowl, that's obviously later on in the bowl game, schedule. So
yeah.
we probably won't hear anything for a minute still. So I'm assuming
Well,
that's probably what it's gonna be.
I'm here. I'm seeing Brad Crawford, who's pretty reliable, says that his sources say that Miami and Iowa State will play in the Pop Tarts Bowl. So
Hmm.
we'll get to
I might
see
go to that.
some. Yeah, you might get to see some Pop Tarts. Eat a big Pop Tart. Um, but see, in a bowl game like that, does Cam Ward even play in it?
No.
With the way that things are going with the sports, the with the game, like what does Cam Ward have to get out of playing that game, you know?
You definitely do not play. Uh, you definitely do not play Cam Moore. I don't care who you are. He also will not play. Yeah, I guarantee he already knows he's not playing in a bowl game. Right when they knew they were being left out of the playoff, he was like, "Yeah, I don't care who we're playing. You're playing Ohio, you're playing Iowa State. Yeah, there's no reason to. No, there's no way." Which means that which means it's probably going to be a good game. If Cam Ward was playing in that game, it's not a close game. I don't think at all. I think it's an easy win for Miami. Because of that offense with Cam Ward, but he probably won't be playing, so I think it'll be a fun game. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I still haven't seen anything about Florida though. My final prediction is it will be against Duke in the Gator Tag Slayer Bowl, but no telling.
Um, so he's releasing some stuff. So he's saying Illinois versus South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. So all of the Orlando bowls are being announced.
Mm.
Um,
What's his name?
Brad Crawford of 247 Sports. He's usually in the know.
Gotcha.
He's making some tweets. Um, so it's interesting. Gamecocks chosen over Alabama, which and we just talked about this. South Carolina, um, everybody will play for South Carolina. Like that's the type of team they are. Lenore Sellers is a true freshman. Everybody's gonna play. Alabama, who knows if the team's gonna play? Milrow, they're probably depressed they didn't make the playoffs, so they're probably not gonna want to play. So if you're the Citrus Bowl, you're probably like, yes, South Carolina will bring a lot of fans, and they're actually gonna want to be in the bowl game.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You're right.
So, yeah. So it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see who we play because I would take Duke. I mean, hey, let's go.
I think that'd be an amazing game. I think that'd be a really fun one. When's the last time we played Duke in football? I don't even know.
I don't even know.
Yeah, so I think that'd be a very exciting. I don't want Michigan, bro. Please don't give me Michigan.
Please don't give us Michigan. God,
again.
We play Michigan every freak and Iowa.
Yeah, no, seriously, dude, just leave us alone. Washington State would be very fun for the Las Vegas Bowl. So we'll see what happens. I think it'll be cool, exciting. And we'll like I said, we'll keep you guys updated on that. All right, EJ, any last words you want to say to everyone out there, man, before we go?
Hope everyone had a great week. What we're gonna do this week, as soon as we know who we're gonna play, maybe we'll do some shorts, on the IG page, and maybe Logan will do next week a bowl preview. So we'll be able to break down the stats on here's our opponent, here's what we can expect, here's our predictions, and then we'll predict the playoff games, even though we kind of sort of did that already today.
Yeah.
Some of these, we'll give a more of an official pick, and then we're also going to launch our and we'll post it, our college football playoff challenge, I think is what it's called.
Yep.
Our bowl challenge, playoff challenge, I think is on ESPN, but we'll send the link. Everyone can join. Let's see who knows their stuff.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you guys, man. Like EJ said, follow us on Instagram. All the updates will be there. Link in description. Like this video. If you made it this far, we love you guys. Comment down below your thoughts on everything. Subscribe. Hit the bell. You guys know what's up. Stay safe. You guys have a good one.